Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage. On a rainy Thursday evening, it's the same Thursday that I just shot a video on the Clutch Turbo 400, putting the pump drive on. And I should have mentioned that when I put the brass pump drive lug that, rubs up against the pressure plate and spins the pump, I'll have to take that back off to put the bell housing on with the fork and throw it bearing and then put it back on. But instead of losing it, it's attached to the front of the transmission, just like it would have come in the box probably back in the 60s or 70s when you bought this thing. So tonight we're gonna concentrate in the valve body area. And a while back, I got a wicked deal on a slightly used, I think it was returned, TCI reverse manual valve body. The part number is 221100. That's quite a part number. Tells you shift patterns, park, reverse, neutral, first, second, third, away from neutral. So reverse pattern. There's a whole bunch of steps they want you to go through. Decent instructions. I've mentioned this valve body a couple times in the videos leading up to installing it. My only gripe with it is if I bought a manual valve body in the 70s, I would expect some hokiness like this has a spring-loaded check ball that's going to go in this port. The gasket and separator plate completely block off this side. This is a center support bolt right here. This is the one we normally put a 3/8 cut plug in, and all the oil flows in and out of here. Well, when this was engineered, and old valve bodies were like this. I had a Fairbanks aluminum valve body, same technology. I've had a turbo action manual valve body, had the same voodoo. This is 70s technology still being sold in 2025. But as long as you get it right, the instructions tell you to cut the spring and keep measuring the check ball. It has to be 1/8 inch below the valve body surface. Or else, because it says here, if you don't do it right, it will lock up in second gear. You don't want that, so make sure you get that right. Speaking of the instructions, always good to have your valve body instructions when you're assembling a transmission, because most often, work has to be done inside. Specifically, the typical dual feed mods, the second seal from the top of the center support, remove that. Remove the drum seal from the direct clutch. I drilled a bleed hole. They don't mention that. In the servo area, it tells you to take the seals off the servo, but to put the aluminum piece and the spring back in here, goes like that. We'll do that in a second. I believe I mentioned the spring and check ball. You have to keep measuring until it's 1/8 of an inch below the surface. You got to keep whittling on the spring until you get that. I've already done that. I had to cut 1/4 of a coil off it to get it right. I didn't know they gave me a nice red plug with an O-ring modulator plug. I put the stock modulator valve in, and I had an aluminum plug that I already put in months ago at this point, so I'll save that for another project. You have to install a stock manual valve, which I did. I always make sure they're actually stock, but it specifically says it must be stock, so I did. It tells you to put their spring in the pump, and I did that the last video, last week. And I think it's pretty cool. You don't often see this, but it tells you your line pressure, what it should be in each gear. The spring provided should provide between 180 and 200 PSI, except for reverse should be between 100 and 300. Differs with RPM, that's the boost valve kicking in. So, and in the servo drain, this is a pretty popular normal mod. They give you 2 1/4 check balls. One of those you drive down in the servo drain, and I had already done that when the case was bare, so we're pretty much ready to install it. But before we install the valve body, we should put the servo in, the reverse servo, and air check it with the plate that we have. So let's go ahead and do that before I even install it. If you've watched my other videos, is a few ways that we've talked about setting up the length of your pin to make sure it's going to apply the rear band. My favorite method, long before I had any measuring tools or a whole lot of know-how even, I believe it was one of the old rebuilders showed me on the Turbo 400 that if you push down on it, I have no seal on it, I'm just putting it in. The only spring active is this rod, the pin can move in and out. If you watch when this area, because it goes in crooked in the case, the whole thing is off center. When this breaks the plane, you should see the pin start to come up. I'm blocking it, but you can. And I did this for years and years, never had a problem with the pin length with that little bit of knowledge. So I've mentioned it before, but I now have tools to measure, but typically if I just put it in there without the seal on it, and it, again, this little snap ring starts to raise up about the time this breaks the plane of the case right there, it's probably going to be okay. And that's not written anywhere. Use that information at your own peril, but for me, it's done the well. Once again, I'm into the Vaseline again. Petroleum jelly. Vaseline's a brand. Can you hear it raining? Because it's raining hard at the moment. So we'll put that on there. Also put a little bit here. Because I just do not cut a seal. Never have, knock on wood. Also, there's no front band anymore. We left that out. And the associated hardware here. And this is also where the bolt is for the case saver that I put in. So you can dump this in any order you like. You can go like this and dump it in. You can put this stuff in here first and then put this down over it. It really doesn't matter. You can try to push it in and make it stay. It'll probably pop back up. Tonight's going to prove me wrong. Got a brand new gasket. Somebody had already sanded the cover, which is nice. I didn't have to clean that. Typically, a lot of debris in a Turbo 400 collects right here, but this transmission was never run. I'm very careful when the transmission's in this position. If I drop a nut or a bolt or that spring and check ball, it's probably falling down inside. I'm going to take it all back apart again. So I'm going to try to avoid that by just being careful. I know I have to entertain you, but I don't want to drop stuff in the case. What I like about air checking it, whether with the tool that you could buy on most of the transmission forums, I'll give you the information for that, but this gasket, for instance, you can spot it leaking right off the bat. You know what I didn't do, and I want to? Hang on. It's typically when you take it back apart is when you drop something. I mentioned before, this might be sitting around a while. Pay attention. I just want to put a little bit of rust preventative in there because I don't want rust. And that was worth risking dropping parts inside. Otherwise, I'm going to worry about it. These bolts that I'm putting in here on any Turbo 400, you can tell the bolts that live inside, Park and Paul and the reverse servo, compared to the ones that have lived their life outside. Okay. Cross pattern. Same advice for the valve body as I gave you earlier in the other video about the threads in these cases. If you feel the need to torque it, you might feel the need to buy a whole bunch of 5/16 course helicoils. Not saying you can't. Buy a brand new case, sure, but got to develop a feel and save yourself a ton of work by not stripping out all the threads, because it's just old and they were never that great to start with. So. And yes, I checked them many times. Okay. I'm going to set up the air test plate, turn the compressor on, be right back. All right, another perspective for you. I installed the aluminum test plate. This is a product of a guy called Mark Leedham. Might not be the correct pronunciation, but I know the spelling. Leedham. He's from New Hampshire. He actually came to visit me at my house a year or so ago. He sells these plates on the transmission forums or under his own name on Facebook, wherever. Not much money. And what I like about it, and what it easily does, what I couldn't do before, because I never stopped to make a plate, which you could do if you had the time and ingenuity, but it's not much money. You can buy your own. What I can do that I couldn't do before, without one, I can blow through the center support bolt and apply second gear. I can plug one of the direct clutch feeds, blow on the other side, and I can hear the direct clutch. I can blow in the rear servo with my rubber tip blowgun and make that apply, not as smooth as I can with this hole. But the forward clutch, it's a long channel in the valve body, and I would use a little adapter that comes with the tuba sealer, cut the end off and kind of jam it in there and try to make it work. It was not as reliable as this, and not to mention the fact that I've learned with this, if I've packed these seals in the back of the pump with Vaseline, but if I go ahead and spin the input shaft and keep applying it, I can make the seals release and start working. So let me grab my blowgun and we'll go ahead and run through all of them. So. My trusty rubber tip blowgun, had it forever. Rubber, so it seals pretty good. Let's start in the back. Should have my safety glasses on, but I have the air turned down, so this will be the servo, rear servo. You probably can't see it, but the output shaft moves every time. That's working good. Second gear. And I've warned you before, but if you assembled with oil and stuff, it's going to pop back out the hole. Direct clutch, we got to plug one side. Hope you can hear that. Doesn't matter what side. And now, the favorite, the forward. I'll just try it a few times. There we go. Can you hear it? Had to release it a little bit, but now she seals every time. So I'm going to go ahead and take it off. We've just tested it. We know hydraulically this transmission works. So if we have a problem, probably valve body related. So let me take it off. I'll be right back. Okay, the plate is off. We got to remember to put our hokey spring and ball in there. The center support tapers away like this in the hole. The spring was flat, and now that I've cut it, it's kind of longer on one side, so I'll put that there. It lets the spring sit square in the hole. Nothing stops it from spinning, so I'm very careful not to drop the check ball because it wants to be magnetic on my pliers. So now it's sitting in the hole. I'll double check my measurement. Even this is, everything's magnetic tonight, so. But we're good. Look, it picks the ball up every time. So hopefully that's, you know, the deal. I guess we'll know if it isn't. So I also don't like aftermarket valve bodies that take gaskets, but that's what we have. This one has the hole plugged off, this hole right here. Double checking. It's always a good time. Make sure the pins, the nail's still in the linkage. This is tight, everything's good. We got our check ball. Everything's good. It's gonna give, the modulator valve doesn't move, but I don't want to rust. We can put what I believe to be the lower gasket. They're not marked, and they're custom, they're not stock, but it does definitely block that hole. Pretty red separator plate. It's been used because I can see where that ball's hammering. That's concerning, but hey, maybe they cut it like that. So more of a concave, you know what I mean? A seat, like a valve seat. So that's on there. What I believe to be the upper gasket. Looks pretty good. What's nice about manual valve bodies, there's no governor tubes, not a lot of extra pieces. Like the valve body itself, I've already looked at it once. It's sufficiently oily because I think it's been run. But you know me, let's lube her up anyway. Let's give it a little bit of protection, because I don't know how long she's going to sit. The only trick installing the valve body, what I like about my studs, start it down over and you got to guide the manual valve over the linkage. But there's nothing spring loaded, there's nothing on a typical stock valve body. You got other forces working against you. Not so much here. So I usually start with the 3/4 inch bolts. Go ahead and take the studs right out because they're going to be in the way here in a second. We can reinstall them out here for the pan. Whoa. Huh. Okay. Have to look into that situation. Might need a couple of helicopters. You know, that had different bolts in it. Somebody's made those two holes 3/8, so I'll put them back to 5/16. Everything else looks fine. It's got other helicoils, but these two have been enlarged. And I don't want to deal with something like that, so I can safely helicoil them. Glad I noticed, but guess I should have paid closer attention. See, I'm only human. It's not the fact I missed it, just how you deal with it afterwards. Make sure the roller works. That goes on there. Usually tighten that last. Now, taking a valve body off, I always take the 1/4 inch ones off first. But in this situation, I usually tighten them first, if I can find my socket. Same deal. I'm not going to say it anymore. Tighten the bolts how you see fit. I usually go center out, or any pattern that lets me not forget one. At this point, before I get too carried away, I like to shift it through its gears. Make sure that all works good. does. So, final trip. And now just to make sure I start and go this way. Make sure I don't forget any. All right, be right back. Turns out right back is the next night. Now it's Friday night. I jumped ahead, I covered everything important, taped it off, and the holes were tapped 3/8 course, which is just smaller than the helicoil drill, but it worked out, and the helicoil tap went right through it. Now I'm just threading the inserts in. I've already done one. When things go well, you can do them by hand. You want to go below flush. Always check underneath. Right about there, seems pretty good. There's a drive tang inside. When you get them where you like it, take an appropriate punch that fits in the hole. Whack off the tang. Those holes are fixed. Let me go get a filter and a couple other pieces and take all this off. I'll be right back. Preparing for the filter in the pan, the B&M pan that I'm installing, they don't give you a deep pan suction tube. They give you an aluminum adapter with extra O-rings to extend your short pan suction tube. And I don't think I want to introduce another chance for a leak, so we're going to park that for later. This is a universal tube that comes with the cheaper oil pans. There's no legs on it. The biggest problem is the plastic where it's supposed to go into the case is about the same size as the case, and it's wicked tight. So we could use this if we wanted to work on it for a while and then guess on the alignment and tweak it around. We're just not going to do that. I had a new GM, has the lugs on it, the legs I mean, that actually locate it in the case. You know, there's two little arms on it, so you can't get it out of position too far. I put two O-rings on it, lubed it up, shoved it in the case, lost all that footage, but you can imagine that. The filter itself is an Allison 545 open filter. I've sprayed most everything with WD-40, wiped off my pan rail dry again, but everything else has got a coating on it. Again, this thing may sit around. I don't want it rusting. I mentioned that 1,000 times probably. So this is lubed up as well. I'm going to pop that on there. The suction tube is marked case and filter, the good one, the GM style or the GM factory original. That came out of a GM bag. I think I said that. Also had to find a stock shouldered bolt and spacer. In stock form, that bolt could almost fall through the hole. Depends on the quality of the filter. And I don't like that. So I come up with, I like a 5/16 USS washer is 3/8 ID, and it'll fit up over the shoulder of the bolt, even though the thread's a 5/16. Kind of spin this out of the way. And you got to come up with enough washers. I want the filter to be tight when I'm done. So I got a washer on top, two washers on the bottom, because this particular filter is skinny. Then I put the spacer on, hold it all, not drop it inside the transmission, stop my bolt with the hopes that every time I touch it I get all oily because, you know, Sean. When I tighten it, I want the filter to be tight. That's my preferred method. I don't want it jumping around. I check my alignment with the pan rail. Make sure it's not going to hit the inside of the pan. And we're good. We just need a little bit of... We're running out here. A little preventive maintenance. So now is our last chance to make sure the nail's still in the shift shaft, the O-ring's not bulging out around the suction tube, the pock pawl bracket is tight, guide if you will. All the valve body bolts are in it. The linkage works. Modulator, plug, and valves all in there. Because we're not going back. Hopefully, not for a while. So the aluminum pan that I'll show you in a second, the B&M has a nice flat flange. There's no, a steel pan has a ridge around the middle of the flat. I found, kind of by accident, these Farpak, F-A-R-P-A-K gaskets. This was all folded up in the bag with a filter. I don't even know where it was sitting over on my transmission shelf. I save it for these occasions because once the transmission heats up and cools down a few times, you can take all the bolts out and you pretty much got to hammer the pan away. This thing is, I don't know, got magic glue in it or something. So it works well. I don't like it with steel pans, but I do like it with the big aluminum pans. So she's a little kinky, but that's okay. The B&M pan itself came with a nice cork gasket. I'm a fan of the cork gasket. I like this reusable gaskets. Summit Racing has a nice one, half the price of a Moroso, and I think it lasts longer. It's made almost like a 480E reusable gasket, so I'm a fan of that as well. I got all my hardware laid out. I chose the B&M pan, one for nostalgia. Make sure it was super clean here. Two, because it has a provision, gotta cut this wire tight, has a provision right here for a temp sender. We don't have a cooler circuit, so someday when this thing's in action, gonna have a temp gauge. So make sure the pan's clean. I've cleaned it twice. It's kind of a dirty casting that's sitting around. I saw one flaw I wanted to look at, but I guess it was just a piece of dirt. It's a nice thick pan. Hope for the best. It came with regular bolts. Some pans come with Allen head bolts, etc. And those are all super cool until you're on the side of the road. Also like to make sure it's actually going to sit down all the way. Oh. Stand by. Might have interference of some sort. We'll remove the gasket. Definitely have a problem we need to figure out. I'll be right back. So I took the filter off momentarily. And it goes right down. So I have interference with the filter. There's our ribs here, but I've really had them bother before. All right, it took a little finagling. The factory shouldered bolt is not compatible, I guess, with these ribs in the pan. I had another aftermarket bolt and spacer, just a regular 5/16 bolt, but the spacer was a little different. And the filter tucks it a little closer. Now, I think we got it. Further proof, no such thing as a bolt-on part. But you got to check, otherwise you'd be breaking stuff. But now we're flat. So the B&M hardware did come with 2 longer bolts for the linkage, which is cool, because eventually you're going to need them. I do know the B&M pan makes the bolt-on linkage brackets for your shifter a little bit difficult. Modifications will be required, depending on what you use for a shifter. Nothing you can't overcome. So those are the 2 long bolts it came with. Not a lot of clearance with the socket, and then they give you a bunch of short ones, and I won't make you watch me put them all in, but just know that I did, and they're tight, and I'll be right back. So we're on and tight. Everything tightened up really nice. You can feel it when it's nice and flat. You have to imagine this pan becomes like a giant truss for the case. I mean, they'll last just fine with a steel pan, but it has to be more rugged with this monster on there. So, moral dilemma, the plug for the side. I hate to do anything and then try to remember that you didn't do something. Like put sealer on this plug because I want to put a temp sender in there. If I could even thread it in at all. There we go. This pan it was a return. I think she had a rough life. So anyway, got to remember to go back and do that. I do like the magnetic drain plug. It has a nice washer with an O-ring in the middle. That's pretty sweet. If that'll even start in there. We didn't rehearse any of this. Yep, that'll go. So I got to tighten that up. And that pretty much finishes it up. I got some excellent questions from the last video when we did the pump drive. Yes, I have to take this back off to put the throw-up bearing, the fork, and the bell housing on all at once. You can't slide this in like you would with a 4-speed, typical 4-speed or 3-speed transmission. You'd bolt everything up, bell housing and all. Then you just slide the transmission in through the throw-up bearing into the fingers of the clutch disc and then bolt the transmission to the bell housing with 4 bolts or more. Not going to happen with this. You need to assemble everything, bell housing included, on the bench, and then you have to finagle it into the clutch and bolt the bell housing up that way. So that's how that all goes down. And we have to clean and modify a bell housing, just the threads where the bolts go. And I still haven't done the tail housing, and I think I need to put the pressure port plug in as well right here. And that's it. The clutch turbo will live again. I don't know its intended use, so what I'm going to do with it, but I couldn't let it just sit there and rust. So have a great weekend. It's Friday night late. I like listening to Friday night radio, but you're more fun. So, all right, if my clicker works, I'm out of here.